everyone. Welcome again, for the last time, to the SOGIE Saga. I hope never to have to encounter SOGIE again in my life, given how strenuous it has been dealing with it for the last couple of days. So, where are we? Where were we? Well, yesterday, it was a thing. It was a continuing cavalcade of uncomfortable, awkward, inappropriate concepts and ideas being floated to us by two adults, purportedly, who really want to get into the personal lives of 9-year-olds. I won't try to repeat yesterday for you here in a narrative form because I don't know that the sanity barrier could take it. But rest assured, if you really want to put yourself through a mental endurance test, you can start off with SOGIE Part 1 and then SOGIE Part 2. And now we come to the finale, because one way, shape, or form, I'm finishing this thing today. And I'm not going to give much more, recitation of previous events, because if you really want to know, it's all there for you. But before I get to today's segment, who's joining me? Brave souls that you are. Tier Alexander. Keeverdam. I'm going to do it like a roll call, like Dirty Dozen or Mickey Mouse Club. TC. Matt Barnes. Zed the Snarky. First time I made it to the waiting room for one of these in ages, I feel like I've been lost in the desert or in the woods. Well, your mind's about to get abandoned somewhere. I'm not quite sure if it's the woods, the desert, or the insane asylum. I guess we'll find out. Thank you, Zed, for being here. Mike R. JB. Mike Savage. Kiro Soldier. Did I already say hello to TC? Well, TC, hello. K-Shoal. Who else is there? Some Namdul Nation. Shadowclaw. The Best Remy. Matthew James. Bishop. Simon Willikins. Derek LaRue. Holy cats. Thank you, Derek, so much. That's very generous of you. Thank you. Excuse me. I lost my voice there for a second. Appreciate it. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you enjoy the show for what it is. And thanks, as always, for your generosity and support. Anybody else on the roll call here? Dina B. And Hi, M. Steve. And Advocatus Diaboli. So there you are. All right, guys, here we are. So I'm starting with where we left off in the last card with the Family Acceptance Project, or FAP. God, I can hardly even. Okay, so walk us through the sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression process as relates to FAP.
These are, again, some values that I think about going into these conversations, again, from the Family Acceptance Project, their research, evidence-based approach, and their findings, that whatever I'm offering, I want to find out about culture so that I can align with it.
You want to find out about culture so you can align with it. So sort of a karma chameleon.
I want to understand what are these parents' hopes, values, concerns for their child, so that I can really, when I offer the rationale for why we're doing this work, it's in service of the things that they want for their child.
Right. So you're going to craft your argument for why you should be speaking to somebody else's child about these subjects in order to align with their culture. So I don't know. It just on at first blush, that sounds a little Trojan horse-ish. Sounds a little manipulative, but what do I know?
I try to help parents if they're really struggling or ambivalent. They don't have to completely understand or accept their child's identity to support them and love them. And
their child's identity they don't necessarily have to understand or accept in order to support and love. This thing that a 9-year-old has declared. And just for reference, they haven't gone any farther so far than naming that the top age that they have mentioned in this presentation is 10 years old. And yesterday it was a 4th grader, so at best about 9 years old. So that's what we're talking about here. Having these discussions with 9-year-olds and believing 9-year-olds when they make declarative statements about very intricate and nuanced elements of their makeup when their brain is not even anywhere near having fully developed yet. And for some reason, for reasons I'm still not quite clear on, the representatives of whatever our speaker's ideology is are involved in these children's lives. I mean, we've gone everywhere from social workers to caregivers to teachers to therapists, which seems a bit far afield all around, but again, what do I know?
And I think that's really important for us to know and for parents to know. And I'm going to provide, like, again, bite-sized pieces of psychoeducation. Again, it's important for parents to know that little changes in their behavior can have a profound impact on their child's well-being and their future well-being.
Wow, I'm sure that most parents had no idea that their behavior had an impact on their children's well-being. I'm glad you're there to educate all the parents that are obviously deficient in parenting.
And just to kind of give, a picture of, these are some of the values over the course of my work that I have heard families, share. These are the things that are important to them. Again, I don't know that I've ever encountered a parent that didn't want their child to be alive, that didn't want their child to, be successful and healthy and well, and go on to, have success and do better than their parents did, right? They want them to, have a long, full life.
So what is, I know I keep asking the same question. How is any of this your business? If it's just a matter of parents seeing to the well-being of their children, there's an operative word in there. Their, T-H-E-I-R, their children. Why are you here? As far as I can recall, and admittedly, it has been a long slog through this presentation, I don't believe I've yet to hear how, or especially why, anyone with a SOGIE curriculum or SOGIE mindset is involved in these families' lives in the first place. If you're there as a therapist for the family, then you're there as a therapist for the family. You're not there as a therapist for easing someone else's child into your way of thinking about how they should think about things that they shouldn't be thinking about at 9 years old. But I love this little image on the screen here. For those of you listening at home, it's a little slideshow thing. It's got a little cartoon version of our speaker, and she's holding up a sign that says judgment-free zone. Now, I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, has it felt like there's been no judgment as pertains to parents and families throughout this presentation? Is it just me, or has there been sort of a default suspicion about the healthfulness of parents and families in this dynamic? Or is that just me?
And so again, when we're asking about these things and we're starting the conversation from this place and what we're offering is aligned with these values, that's where we can really get traction.
What are you offering?
Terms of, like, stay with me. I care about these things too. We're in this together. Like,
why?
Can we continue to do this work together?
What is your relevance? I know I'm asking the same. I can't get it out of my head. Can't get you out of my head. What is your relevance? Why are you here? What is your purpose in the first place? Is this your purpose simply for this SOGIE thing?
All right. And just to give, again, everyone's going to have these slides, but we wanted to give some sample language and, again, emphasize that these don't have to be like in-depth conversations. You do not need to be an LGBTQ+ expert, but everyone who's working with children and families, I believe, should really have the ability to ask some basic questions, receive information, and respond to questions and concerns. Because, again, children are this is the work that they are doing. They are in the process of developing their gender identity, their sense of self.
Okay, so again, as our speaker in the previous part mentioned, when it comes to the actual subject matter she's covering here, she has no professional experience, yet here she is acting as an educator of a kind. And once again, she underlines the fact that you don't need to be an expert to talk about these subjects with children. It's just okay. Let's see if she goes over these one by one, or if I have to read everything.
So these are some helpful language, and we'll point to a resource that has more of this broken out. again, some questions asking and talking about sexual orientation, ways that.
Well. Okay, you skipped the card. She skipped the card. Of course she did. Okay, I have to go back and read this nonsense. Okay, for those of you listening at home, we have a slide up called "Asking and Talking About Gender." It is split up into several different columns and side columns. So, subject number 1, name. To parents and caregivers, I would say something like, "What name does your child like to go by?" How about, what is your child's name? And if they say something like Michael, you can say, do they like Mike? Do they want to be like Mike? I don't know. What do you say to children? What name should I call you while you're here? Why don't you just ask them, what's your name? What name shall I call you? And just, holy cats. Whoa. Keeverdam. Oh, sorry. I got so caught up I didn't see it in the chat. Pardon me. Keeverdam, thank you. That's my vocabulary has failed me. GoFundMe's are in chat. Thank you, Keeverdam. Posted those at the top of the chat box. We'll get to those momentarily. Also, I can't leave my subdivision, which only has 2 exits right now, because the POTUS is going to pass through, presumably on the highway right outside the neighborhood. I tried leaving earlier, but I was still denied access FML. So wait, Joe? Big Uncle Joe is passing through your town? Good gravy. So you're trapped. You're trapped by Biden. You're bound by Biden. Jeez. I'm sorry. That is a terrible scenario to be in. I hope they get through quick and let you go. That's nuts. You can't get, that's silly. Locked off from your own exit of your own. Okay, well, you have my sympathies, Keeverdam. And thank you, Keeverdam, as always, for providing the GoFundMe links. Guys, take a look at the top of the chat box, if you would, for the GoFundMes for our friends Moonshock, Natalie, Angela Arriaga, James Colley, and Rhonda. If you can take a look at those and donate if you are able. If you're not, that's fine. But if you can, share those out on social media. That would be very much appreciated. And Keeverdam, thank you again for providing those. And thank you so much. It's very generous of you. Really appreciate it. And I hope Joe sets you free soon. Also, we have a celebrity in the chat, amongst everybody else who's a celebrity, but Andy Masterson's here. The Wood Chipper is a nice place for those who want to discuss this with kids. Yeah, tell me about it. I don't think you were here for the previous 2 parts in this series, but man, I was having a rough time yesterday. It was getting pretty bad. Andy Masterson, everybody. If you don't know about Andy Masterson, check him out on YouTube. He's a frequent, co-panelist with me on different Midnight's Edge stuff, and also he makes custom action figures that are awesome. I can't say much more than that. I'd be trying to overplay it, but really, go check him out on YouTube and follow him on Twitter. But put your stuff there in the chat there, Andy. And also, since he is a known friend, there we go. All right. So anyway, back to the madness. What was I talking about? All right. So we talked about names. When you're bringing up names to parents or children, this is what you say. Okay, now pronouns. What do I say to parents and caregivers? What pronouns does your child use? And if I was the parent at that point, I'd ask that person to leave. But anyway, next, does your child like being called he, she, they, or something else? Now, if I were a father, and with the humor that my family has, if somebody came up to ask me and says, does your child like to be called he, she, they, or something else? I'd probably say something like, Cthulhu. Just call my child Cthulhu. That's what they prefer. You know, as they are legion. He's one tentacle of the many. You know, that's how we operate in this household. I'd love to see what they'd say. Anyway, what do I say to a child about their pronouns? What are your pronouns? And most children go like, what? Because they're a child. Being an English major, I'm not even sure I had a handle on the concept of pronouns when I was in 4th grade. Probably wasn't first on my list. But anyway, and then alternately, what pronouns would you like me to use? Provide example of how pronouns are used. Yeah, so I'm going to be an English teacher to some child as a social worker, therapist, or something. Okay, now for the big event, gender identity. How do I speak to parents and caregivers about gender identity? There are 3 ideas. First one, what gender or genders does your child identify with or identify with the most? Okay, and presumably I'm coming into the situation, if I'm the caregiver, no, it's not the caregiver, pardon me, if I'm the social worker, therapist, teacher, whatever, I'm entering this conversation presumably not knowing anything about the child. But my first question should be these. Okay, next, do you think your child is questioning their gender identity? Okay, and lastly, do you have any concerns about your child's gender development you'd like to discuss today? I'm really trying to imagine a scenario where any of this makes any reasonable sense. Okay, but anyway, how do I speak to children? Now we have it split up between children and teens and young adults. So how do you speak to children about gender identity? Let me fortify myself a little bit here. Okay. Gender is a special word that describes if someone feels like a boy, a girl, both, or neither. No, it's not. No, it's not. That's not what it's not a very special word, and it doesn't actually do that. So I'm already telling children falsehoods. Okay, next. Your gender, feeling like a boy, girl, both, or neither, is how you feel inside your heart and your brain. Next, some people feel like neither a boy or a girl or something different altogether. If I was a 9-year-old, I'd say I'm Spider-Man or a dinosaur or something. Okay, and lastly, do you feel more like a boy or a girl or maybe something in between? Again, we're talking from our speaker's previous examples, 2 to, I suppose, 12-year-olds, because we haven't gotten to the teens column yet. So you're asking a 2 to 12-year-old, do you feel like a boy or a girl or maybe something in between? Okay, and then lastly, the column for the teens and young adults. How do I speak to them about gender identity? What is your gender? Okay, next, what genders do you identify with the most? Well, personally, I identify with male and female because those are the only two. I mean, just in general, in life, in my personal self, well, I'm a man, and that's how it is. Next, during puberty, your body experiences many different changes. All this is completely normal, but can be confusing. That might be the first and only perfectly reasonable statement of fact in this entire presentation. Okay. And lastly, sometimes people feel as if they're more of a boy or girl or something else inside while their body changes in another way. What has it been like for you? Hi, caramba. I don't even know what I'm talking about now, but we have another celebrity in the chat. Who's here? Your boy, Pat. It's your boy, Pat. You know, I don't think I've ever gotten a wowie wow wow from Pat. I don't think I have. I need to get a wowie wow wow from Pat. I got most of my other YouTube. Yeah, I don't have. I need a Pat wowie wow wow. Pat, if you have the time at some point, if you can record 1 or 2 takes at like a wow. Let me give you an example. Here's I'll give you 2 examples. I'll give you like one of the classics.
Wowee! Wow! Wow!
Of course, we have the much more sultry.
Wowie! Wow! Wow!
And then we have the absolutely off-kilter.
Wowee! Wow! Wow!
So, however you feel to do it, if you give me your best Barry White or you want to go completely Looney Tunes, perfectly fine. But I need a Pat wowie wow in my collection. I just do. Suddenly I don't know why I don't already have one. You ridiculous lunatic. Hello. Payar D Bayar. Hello. All right. So anyway, that's how you're supposed to talk to parents, children, and or teens about names, pronouns, and gender identity. Those are the icebreakers. All right. What's next?
It's broken out. Again, some questions asking and talking about sexual orientation, ways that you can approach this conversation with parents, children, and adolescents. You know, often I don't introduce these questions with children until about the age of 9 or 10.
Yeah, well, we were talking about that yesterday. You don't usually enter into these conversations with children until age 9 or 10. Is there a Please don't tell me that there's a but coming.
Thinking through a developmental lens. Certainly some kids are there earlier. Some kids are there a little bit later.
So you would talk to a child younger than 9 about these topics if they, quote unquote, the child was already there. What does that even mean?
So again, those are decisions that you make within your own practice, but it's important to, again, to know how to kind of respond to kids who may be questioning or need a little bit more explanation.
Okay, you're not even going to go over what's on the card, are you? Okay, I have to, oh my God. Okay, here we go, guys. Card number 2, asking and talking about sexual orientation. 3 columns, parents and caregivers, children, and then adolescents, teens, and young adults. Okay, I need a breather, and thankfully, gratefully, JB has given me one. Thank you, JB, so much. Them, we must teach children about gender identity. Me, why? Them, you bigot, they will sue themselves. That seems to be it, doesn't it? This weird emotional blackmail, unless you give in to our strange and disturbing interrogations of children on subjects that are probably not appropriate to do so, their lives are at risk. Okay, all right, so here we go. Column number 1, parents and caregivers. Each, let's see, okay, ask about child sexual or... I don't have like a... I wouldn't want to do it to the audience by having like a throw-up stinger in my repertoire. Okay. How does your child identify their sexual orientation? You're asking a parent or caregiver this. Okay. Next, provide accurate information and clarification. Number 1, sexual orientation is based on the identities of the person or people they are attracted to, romantically, emotionally, and or physically. I just, the use of the term identities and effectively describing adjectives that describe what you are, not who you are, really, for some reason that hits me on sort of a very visceral level, intellectually and grammatically. For some reason, I don't know, maybe it's my English major upbringing. Next, most children develop their first crush at around 9 to 10 years old, regardless of their sexual orientation. Oh, is that why you guys are hitting them at that age? Is that why that's your target age for starting this entire process? Ugh. Next, the way your child feels, how they identify, and the terms they use to describe themselves may change over time. You don't say. What's most important is that they know we will support them as they discover who they are. Well, hopefully most good parents are doing that regardless of you being involved. And again, I ask, why are you involved? Why are you here? What is your purpose? Who invited you? I'm speaking rhetorically to the followers of the SOGIE process. Lastly, elicit and validate concerns. Do you have any concerns about your child's sexual development you'd like to discuss today? Let's say I did. I can't imagine, but let's say, just hypothetically, why would I talk to you? I mean, even if we just go past the abstract and just refer to our speaker, she's already told us earlier in this presentation that she has no professional experience with these subjects. So she's not qualified to even discuss these in the first place, according to her. But, okay. Okay. Gritting my teeth a little bit here. We're into the children column. Ugh. Respond to questions and curiosity. Number 1, sexual orientation describes who someone loves or is attracted to. All right, that is a factual statement. How is that going to open the door for something much more disturbing? Number 2, some families have a mom and a dad. Some have 2 moms or 2 dads. Some only have 1 mom or dad. Okay, all right, so nothing overtly disturbing there so far. Moving on. Supporting children who may be questioning. Who may be, again, 9 to 10-year-olds. Number 1, communicate messages of acceptance and support. For what? Number 2, I hope you know that I'm here for you no matter what, and you can talk to me about anything that's going on. Again, this is coming from the perspective of a non-family member, therapist, social worker, teacher, whatever. And just to remind, the only reason I'm looking at this entire presentation in the first place is because something akin to this is going to be implemented by mandate in the state of Washington soon, with a law that was just passed about an LGBTQ plus curriculum, including SOGIE stuff. That's why I'm looking at this. So in some way, shape, or form, this stuff and the advice herein is going to find its way into classrooms in Seattle and whatever in Washington State within the next month or so, and over the next year. Lastly, respect and meet children where they are at, and listen without passing judgment. Now, you've already come to a conclusion about where you want to guide them as far as all this is concerned. You can't just leave them be a 9 or 10-year-old. That's not your child. All right, last column, adolescents, teen, and young adults. Ask about their sexual orientation. What is your sexual orientation? I cringe at the idea of this conversation taking place in a school, like a teacher, inquiring of their student or students. Tell me, who are you sexually attracted to? Does that sound appropriate in any way, shape, or form in a public school? Next, provide accurate information and clarification. Sexual orientation. Yeah, we did that. How you feel, how you identify, and the terms you use to describe. Yeah, okay. Lastly, explore needs and concerns. Do you have any concerns about your sexual or gender identities that you would like to discuss today? Next, is this something you would like to discuss or explore more in our time together? Okay. And lastly, have you ever received helpful education about healthy relationships and sexual health that included information relevant to you and your experiences? And you're asking, 11 to, I'll say, 18-year-olds on this? Okay.
Just a few more tidbits before we share a tool, and then we'll wrap up with
Please do not share your tool.
Revisiting Michael and their father. So this is very similar advice that I give to my teachers when.
Oh, you're going to do wait, sorry, apologies. He just mentioned something offhand. So for those of you that weren't here for yesterday, they did a role-playing exercise where Johnny, who's speaking here, played a hypothetical father, and Antonia played a hypothetical therapist, talking to the father about his child Michael's identities and so on. And it was a very, very on-point role-playing session because Johnny did an excellent job playing a rational, reasonable parent being confronted by somebody who was obviously bent on an ideological end towards his child. I mean, it was amazing. You listen to that role-play session and I was like, Johnny is completely in the right, but somehow this is the wrong way for this conversation to have gone. So apparently they're going to follow up with a corrected version of that conversation, if I'm getting the implication right. So I can't wait for that. Okay.
When they're doing curriculum and lessons on this. I mean, if you can imagine having these conversations one-on-one with children, imagine having them with 25 children in the same space, and things are going to come up. Questions are going to be asked. So
yeah, a lot of questions would be asked, primarily by parents and perhaps certain authority figures.
Always take a breath. What feels like a long time to us in responding is often much shorter in real life. Follow their lead. Let their questions guide you. Be honest and accurate, and be simple and concrete. What's important is in terms of that.
Wait. Simple and concrete about the most personal, not your business, and internally nuanced elements of a child's development. And not even at that point in life. God, this is just so.
Honesty and accuracy is to also know that, it says here, when in doubt, seek support and follow up. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, that's a great question. You know what? And I'm not sure how to answer that, but.
So maybe it should be your parents you take that question to. I don't even know why we're bringing this up in the first place in the classroom, but I mean, if you have a question that I can't answer, it's probably better to ask your parents. It's really none of my business. Well, why am I doing this again? Oh.
I'm going to look into it and then get back to you next time we meet. That is the best advice that I give my teachers and the kids ask some pretty interesting questions when we start to talk about this stuff at young ages. So saying I don't know is okay.
Talking about this stuff at young ages, huh? Your teachers, huh? Okay. All right, he didn't even go over the card, did he? Why bring up these slides if you're not going to at least... Okay. Responding to SOGIE questions and curiosity. Take a breath. Let their questions guide you. Be honest. Okay, no, I guess he did. So, apologies. I just spaced out there. Offer bite-sized pieces of information and see how they respond. Well, then what? What lead them on with breadcrumbs? It's like, well, it's a little bit like this. And if they're still curious, do you, then feel justified in continuing on and giving more details in depth to 9 and 10-year-olds?
This stuff at young ages. So saying I don't know is okay.
All right. And so this is the resource that we were calling out to, and there's a QR code there. This is from the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. I'll just very quickly say it was developed over a period of 4 to 5 years.
The National Child Traumatic Stress Network. Okay.
By a group of practitioners from across the country, practicing in all different types of settings, but really designed to support any kind of practitioner working with children and families to be able to ask these questions and start these conversations in the context of care.
Is it just reflexive, or should? This is what I guess this is my biggest wonderment. It's like, does everybody go in assuming they're going to be interrogating somebody else's child about these subjects, and also assuming that there's some doubt already there? Or do you need somebody to tell you first that this is an issue within the family? Because this almost feels like this entire process is just confirmation bias in written form. But it feels more like this is a crusade than just an element of potential subjects to cover as a whatever social worker, therapist, or whatever, etc. But when we get into teachers, that's completely different.
There's 2 parts to this. Part 1 contains a lot of these best practices and preparation tools that we've been discussing.
I wish you'd been discussing some best practices, but you told us earlier that there are no set rules. So
it's also great. It's kind of designed with organizations in mind. If you need to advocate for this use and make a case to leadership of why it's so important to include this practice.
What organizations? What are you talking about? Schools and school districts? What?
It's also not designed as a standalone tool. Part 2 is a questionnaire that has separate sets of questions for children and caregivers. We invite people to pull out the questions that feel relevant, right? We wanted to offer a lot of sample language and ways to introduce this, but it's something that you can use to kind of expand your own practice and insert the questions that maybe you're not asking already.
Okay, I'm going to go over the points on the card because she's kind of covering them, but still. The National, I think it was Center for National Children Trauma Stress Network. Number 1, brief questionnaire designed to be administered separately to youth 7 to 18 and their caregivers. 2, respectfully asks for information related to youth's sexual orientation and gender identity. 3, provides follow-up questions to screen for trauma experiences more specific to LGBTQ plus youth, because if a straight kid has had some kind of traumatic experience, then to hell with them, I guess. And lastly, not designed to be used as a standalone tool or to yield diagnosis. Then what is it? What is it there to do, and what is the purpose as relates to whoever it is you're educating on this subject right now? And again, does this test just assume there is some kind of gender crisis within a 7-year-old?
I just wanted to highlight that, folks. And I will say one more really important thing about this is that this was also developed with a lot of youth input.
Oh, was it? Wow, great. Because young people are expert sociologists or something.
So we piloted this, tried this out, had focus groups of young people while I was a program director. And they gave us a lot of advice, not just about the questions, but the process for how this should be introduced, really based on what would make them feel safest and most cared for.
All right. So you deferred to the wisdom of children then. Oh, okay.
We also had the opportunity to pilot it with Johnny and his family.
So Johnny and his family were guinea pigs for this entire process? Oh, good.
It's a great place to go. And I think now we are going to return to our, do a kind of return to the role play.
And this will be a bit of a wrap up for how this could have gone differently with with a clinician who has done a lot of the preparation we've talked about this afternoon, including perhaps that Antonia used the SOGIE screener early on in the process with Michael and their father.
Their father, right. Okay, so again, for those of you that weren't here yesterday, there was a 2-person role play. We had the dad, we had the therapist, and the therapist gave unvarnished, blunt, non-filtered information back to the father, telling the father that Michael, the child, was a they, them, and had questions about their gender identity and pronouns and so on and so forth. And Johnny, the father, was understandably bewildered, irritated, and a little bit adversarial about this lady messing around in his child's mind. So now, what looked like a completely reasonable and healthy discussion between a parent and a stranger who had been temporarily put in charge of his child, now we're going to hear, I assume, the corrected version of this conversation. Are you ready? Because I sure am.
All right.
Okay. So, hello there. Thanks again for making this time to check in. As you know, I've had a few sessions with Michael, and I thought it would be good to just check in on a few different things.
No problem. I just wanted to get better.
Yes, I can really see how important this is to you.
I can really see how important. He's the father of this child. Of course it's important. It's his child. Well, thanks for acknowledging the importance of a child to their parent.
You're really dedicated to your child's well-being.
Well,
I've started to get to know Michael and learn more about the types of situations that are creating worry and anxiety.
Definitely avoiding using any pronouns there. Okay.
And as a part of that conversation, Michael has also been talking about identity.
Michael has been talking about, again, remember, Michael is a 9-year-old in this scenario. Michael, the 9-year-old, has a level of introspection and self-reflectiveness to be talking about identity in the common modern parlance.
You mean like what he wants to be when he grows up?
Hey!
In a way. You might remember that when we first started meeting, I asked both you and Michael some questions about identity, including some questions about gender.
So you, the therapist, injected the concepts of gender and identity into the mind of the child when you first met. And lo and behold, your realm of focus and quote-unquote expertise just happens to be a topic of conversation that you ended up having with Michael, the 9-year-old, and he repeated back to you words that you had been saying. Okay.
Have you ever had any conversations like that with Michael?
Like, what do you mean?
Well, it's pretty typical for children Michael's age to have questions about their bodies, about their identities, especially as they're approaching puberty and they start to experience changes in their body.
Especially if you put them in the care of a ideologue like me.
I'm wondering if Michael has ever expressed any concerns with you, or perhaps that maybe you've observed something that raises questions or concerns for you about Michael's gender development.
I'm not really sure, but how does this relate to his treatment? We're here because he's having some issues at school with making friends.
And we're not going to acknowledge the possibility that Michael is saying what you want to hear, lady, as an adult, as an authority figure, because children, by and large, generally want to please the adults around them, like their parents, like authority figures, and so on. There's no chance that Michael is simply being a parrot to your obsession to get along with you. No, I obviously I'm the Looney Tunes one.
Yes, Michael and I have been talking a lot about struggles with school and with relationships with peers.
What kind of relationships? I have to ask, of course.
And we've started to explore some of the things that are bringing up those feelings of anxiety and worry and sadness.
I have noticed a change in him in school this year, but he hasn't talked to me about it, what's going on. And he says everything is fine. What has he said to you?
Okay, well, Dad, you need to interrogate a bit more than that, but okay.
Right now, one of the things that Michael is struggling with is some feelings of discomfort and questions about gender identity.
Yes, I'm sure. Michael, the 9-year-old, is struggling with gender identity.
Michael's been thinking about this for some time now, and recently it's started to become a bigger source of stress.
I'm confused. What's he stressed about? Are you saying Michael thinks he's a girl?
No, Michael doesn't think that he's the girl, but Michael...
Oh, you said he! You said he! Did I get that? Oh, did she just use the wrong pronouns? Because in the first round, she was saying they and them.
I'm confused. What's he stressed about? Are you saying Michael thinks he's a girl?
No, Michael doesn't think that he's the girl, but Michael has shared that he isn't sure if he's a boy.
Well, there's only one other option. Right? Of course not.
Sometimes he feels more like he's somewhere in between being a boy and a girl.
Oh, she's just playing along with the pronoun game until she can ease into the whole they, them thing, right?
Michael has also asked me to use they and them pronouns.
Ah, there you go. See, it was a sales pitch. It was going along and imitating the father's use of the correct grammar until it's now Michael is asking, it's his agency that we're supposed to be respecting now. Michael has suddenly had this revelation while in my care, just so you know. You don't know anything about this, of course, being the parent, but I've been able to elicit the secret hidden information from your 9-year-old.
When we're meeting together.
Wait, how long have you been talking about this? Why didn't you tell me?
Good question. What's your answer?
Yeah, in our very first session, I asked Michael the same questions about gender and pronouns that I asked you when we met.
Again, reinforcing a conclusion that you want this child to fulfill for your desperate need for affirmation of your belief system.
Michael didn't actually say anything then, but did express some curiosity about the different gender identities when we went through the questions.
An impressionable 9-year-old, you say?
When we had our session last week, Michael asked to revisit the questions and this time asked if we could try using they and them pronouns.
Did he ask or did you prod him towards that end?
And this really kind of opened up a conversation about some of the questions Michael has been having about their gender.
Yeah, ever since he met you, he suddenly has questions about his gender. It's amazing. None of this came up before we started seeing you.
I know we talked about confidentiality, but I have the right to know what's going on with my son.
He's absolutely right.
Absolutely. You do have a right to know what's going on with your child.
Is there a but coming?
And this is something that's really important for you to know.
When
Michael first shared this with me, I asked if it was something that you knew about or if it was something that Michael was ready for you to know. They wanted to share with you, but they weren't sure. In fact, they thought that you might already suspect, and they just weren't sure about how to start the conversation.
Again, this is purportedly from the mind and nuance of a 9-year-old.
This was actually creating a lot of anxiety for Michael, so we decided to take one more session to make a plan for how to share this with you.
So you've been plotting with a child, not your own, behind the backs of the parents, to make an announcement about something that you have a particular interest in guiding children towards. Okay. Tell you what, if I was the dad, let's say I was the dad, and this is what this lady was telling me. I'd say, okay, well, we are going to cease making use of your services. Thank you. Goodbye. And that'd be it. And then we'd see after about 6 months time what does Michael end up focusing on? Not bringing this up again, just letting the kid be the kid. And just see if the subtraction of this lady's influence on the child's life doesn't have a significant effect on what conclusions about the child, or conclusion the child has had about himself after that amount of time. Just, or find a therapist that isn't a zealot.
And we actually plan for the conversation that you and I are having right now.
Oh, they did.
I'm going to pause because this is a lot to take in. And I imagine that you have a lot of questions and concerns.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I wanted to talk with you alone without Michael here is just to give you the opportunity to react and express your feelings, ask questions, whatever you need without worrying about how that might impact Michael.
Okay, so use you as the sounding board ahead of time. So you're effectively jumping in front of the bullet of the child because you know or suspect that the family is going to react badly to these wondrous revelations you've laid on them. Okay?
Okay, that is a lot to take in.
Yeah. And maybe you want to get a second opinion.
Bottom line, though, is that Michael wanted me to know this. He asked you to share this with me.
Maybe you should go talk to your kid. Maybe you should go talk with your kid. Like, say, thank you, goodbye, cut this off and go talk to your kid. She's not important anymore. She's not important anymore.
Yeah. One of the things that's become really clear in our time working together is that Michael loves you very much and wants to be open with you about how they're feeling.
Which is why I have to be the pass-through for some reason.
That's good to hear. I do love him very much. I just don't want life to be harder for him than it already is.
Okay, so Dad's already accepting of this without any other questions, concerns, or suspicions about the motivations of the therapist. Okay.
Yeah. The good thing is that Michael was brave enough to bring it up during one of our early sessions and has started to share more about how they've been feeling.
Yeah. And again, somehow all this came about when he met you.
So they don't have to carry it alone anymore. Mm-hmm. The more people Michael can safely reach out to for support, the less isolated and alone they're going to feel.
So now that I've slowly tried to convert you over to my cause on behalf of your child.
Does this mean Michael's going to want surgery? I don't think I'm ready for anything like that.
Oh, no. No, we'll wait till he's at least 11 for that.
We don't know where Michael is going to end up with regard to their gender, but surgery is a decision that's typically made when Michael reaches adulthood.
Yeah. Oh, really? Are you sure about that? Suddenly John Cena pops in. I don't know if you've been paying to TikTok and the rest of the internet for the last 5 or 6 years. I got to tell you, it's not necessarily the trend these days. In fact, I did a TED Excellence a long time ago now, and it still scars my brain, where the argument was you got to start far, far earlier in life. Otherwise, puberty might hit and ruin everything. And if you think I'm kidding about that, if you haven't seen that TED Excellence, for your own mental health, I don't recommend necessarily you watch it. But if you do, take it in pieces. And it's a thing that really happened. It really did happen. I don't have the title on me at hand. It was something about gender surgery or whatever. I do remember the thumbnail was like nip tuck for kids. I remember my thumbnails very much. Thank you, JB. There is an important lesson a child can learn from this, and that is don't trust all adults. Yeah, if ever there was a advertisement for stranger danger, right? It's like, hey, kids, let me tell you something. If you ever encounter an adult who starts asking you about gender identity, just turn around and walk away and find an adult you trust. Okay? Find an adult that isn't asking you about your gender identity. Now, that's a bit of a red flag. And even if they're a completely law-abiding citizen otherwise, so what? Just walk away. Walk away. This should be a red flag. A red flag for children, a red flag for parents.
However, they might want to explore some different forms of gender expression like they're doing with their pronouns right now. Right now, Michael is really just asking for some time and space to explore. And I think for some reassurance from you that you love them no matter what.
Maybe you are not the elected representative of my child's mind. Maybe I need to go talk to my kid. Stay away from my family. Thank you. Goodbye.
I do love him, or I guess I love them.
For we are legion.
That feels weird.
It's a lot to process, and it makes sense that you'd be having a lot of overwhelming thoughts and feelings. I really appreciate your openness to having this conversation with me.
So what does this mean for school?
Yeah, what does it mean for school? Because that was the purpose of this in the first place, right?
It's a really great question, and I need to check into a few options. I want to do a little bit of research to get you the best possible recommendations. Would you be open to meeting next week to talk more?
Can we continue our relationship so I can continue to insinuate myself into your family's mental and emotional dynamic?
Yeah, how do I talk to Michael about this now, and now that I know this information?
You're asking her how to talk to your own kid. Okay, so you've already, again, in this scenario versus the first version in the last stream, this father has completely abdicated his role, responsibility, and personal experience with his own child and just given it over to this lady.
Yeah, that's something that we can plan, and talk about with Michael. Is it okay to invite Michael in to chat with us now?
Sure.
Great, and scene.
And scene.
And I know that we are at the end of our time.
Thank goodness for small favors.
We would love to invite folks in the chat to just share if there's any kind of observations, things that you saw that went well, that went differently this time. As folks are chatting up, we also just want to make, I can't not resource you. We wanted to highlight one more resource that's available for children and families. It's an online resource that has a ton of different downloadable, pieces of information that are very culturally grounded.
Culturally grounded. Okay. And again, we're back to the Family Acceptance Program, or FAP. And no, I'm not making that up. For those of you joining late, something that this organization is promoting is something called the Family Acceptance Program. And they were the ones to put that acronym on the screen. I didn't make the connection. If you can believe it, for some reason, I did not make that connection in relation to this subject matter.
And also, I think most importantly, a searchable map so that you can go wherever you are in the country.
A map, you say? Oh, no, now I'm making assumptions.
And look in your area to find where there are supports and resources for children and families specifically.
And I'll just say one last thing on the role playing. You it's not just because we did theater when we were teenagers. I do a lot of work with educators and parents and caregivers around this, and they're just like, I don't know how to talk about this stuff yet.
Well, like I said, in some way, shape, or form, educators, and at least in the state of Washington, are going to be talking to their students about this in the coming months and years as the new law passes up there. A link to the article regarding that is in the description below if you're curious. And somewhere, somehow, the SOGIE, whatever you want to call it, philosophy, process, meandering, abstract gobbledygook is going to be put into that.
And I always say, if you're not good at playing basketball yet, is it good to just talk about playing basketball, or should you actually go play basketball?
I don't know how to take that analogy given the subject matter.
And it's the same with this work. If you want to get better about having these conversations naturally, find a partner, a colleague, a friend, a peer to sit down. Hey, can I just process what I will say, with this family with you?
Can I practice how I'm going to approach 9-year-olds about their sexual orientation with you? Nah, it doesn't quite ring very good. No, it's not a very good sales pitch, is it?
Actually practicing, and that's how we get better at these things. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today, and your attention to this is something that we feel really strongly about.
Yeah,
our email addresses are there,
yeah.
And we will be posting the resources for you. And I think someone was even asking for a copy of the script. We'll send the folks who post this stuff a copy of the script to post as well.
Okay, great. That it?
Thank you all so much for that fantastic presentation.
Are we done? That's literally, I hit the space button on the last second. Okay, we're done. We're done. Finally. That's it. Finito. Finished. Got through it bit by bit, day by day, and here we are. And so what did we learn? Well, I mean, I wanted to know what SOGIE was after reading that article, and boy, howdy, did I find out. And like I say, in some way, shape, or form, at least in the case of Washington State, where now a law has been passed that at least in implication will be dealing with this subject matter and implementing things like this into regular public school education. I can't imagine how, and most of me does not want to try to imagine how, but kids at least as early as 4th grade, and probably earlier, given what I read in the article, yeah, okay. I'll take a minute here for anything you guys have to say, and anything I miss. I mean, I need to take a break, but I'll, let's see. Trust me, dude, we all know you did theater the moment we saw you. Oh, man. Let's see. Somebody else in start chatting with little kids. Yeah. Like, Dear Alexander, do you practice FAP? God, that was so bad. God, what a self-fail that was. I mean, of all the things, really, I mean, it is that they had to know, right? The people putting this together had to understand how bad that looks, given the subject matter and the context, right? If they didn't, if they had no idea. Blue-eyed scream. I learned that therapists don't know that self-hatred is a sign of sex abuse. Yeah. I'm not even sure that our speakers were therapists. Well, I should take it back. No, the lady, she mentioned that she was a therapist of some kind of like a family therapist, but she also told us in no uncertain terms that the subject matter that she was talking about was outside her realm of professional experience. I don't know. I went to a therapist briefly in my life after I started getting on antidepressants because I wasn't really sure if any changes I was seeing in my personality were from the antidepressants, and if they were, is it a healthy way of thinking because I'd lived so long in anxiety and everything else. And I was wary, because a therapist is just, again, somebody with a degree until I've had a chance to talk to them, and whether or not anything they're doing is actually beneficial, I can't tell. I try to be reasonably skeptical, not overtly adversarial with people who comport themselves to be experts in something. They have a degree, they have a master's or whatever. So, there's a little bit of benefit of the doubt extended. But I was still wary. Is this going to be worthwhile? Is this a quack? And I don't know. But she was perfectly fine. I effectively got out of the therapy what I was looking for. But if I'd walked in there and she started asking me irrelevant questions about things that had nothing to do with the purpose of my visiting there or anything else, as an adult, I would have been more than a little suspicious about what exactly is going on here. Why are you asking me these things? Now imagine that scenario, but you've got a 9-year-old who doesn't know anything, doesn't have any wherewithal of the world, hasn't lived enough life to be able to discern between suspicion and trust when it comes to adults or certain weird concepts or vocabulary they're not familiar with. And then put them in a scenario where they've got an adult asking them questions about things and looking for answers, and you're trying to be accommodating because you're a child, and pleasing the adults around you and everything is kind of reflexive because it's just on a sort of instinctual survival level. And then they introduce you to all this crazy stuff that you haven't even been thinking about as a 9-year-old. I was trying to think yesterday after the stream. I was like, what was I thinking about at 9? How old was I? I mean, how old was I? What year was it when I was 9 years old? It was 1988. 1988. What was I thinking about? I was thinking about Spider-Man, after-school cartoons, and the little bit of homework I had to do. The intricacies of my inner workings and psychology. I don't think I was quite there yet. And if someone had started asking me about those things, I can only imagine I'd be just absolutely bewildered and want to get back to playing Nintendo. I don't know. Anyway, Derek LaRue, I don't think these people use the 3 brain cells left in their brains, and don't call children they, them. They make any excuse to confuse any child they can, proper use of they included. Right. This is not the time of a child's development to start introducing them to neutral abstracts of identity or anything else. you let the kid grow up. Let the kid grow up. You know, just leave them kids alone. And I'll keep coming back to it. What business is this of yours? Who are you? I'm speaking to our speakers and the abstract individuals that they are representing or attempting to educate. What business is this of yours? I mean, especially public school teachers. Of all the other things, if it's a family therapist, depending on the context, maybe it is relevant. I can't say. In the case of a social worker, maybe it is relevant in some way, shape, or form. It shouldn't be the focus. It shouldn't be the goal of the conversation to uncover these secrets in a child or something. But I'm sure that conflicts and dynamics like this can come up in the course of families. I know they have. I have friends who have gone through this in one way, shape, or form, right? Because they came out to their parents or something back in the days when coming out to somebody was a really big deal or that kind of thing. At least socially speaking, it's still a big deal to the individual. But this all feels like it's a predetermined goal. But the one question the biggest question mark is, why teachers? What is any of this? Or I should say, how is any of this the realm of a public school teacher? At what point and in what appropriate manner is a public school teacher interrogating a student about their sexual orientation? When is that ever appropriate? And if it ever comes up, if a student ever came up to a public school teacher and started asking them about that, the first reaction should be, have you talked to your parents about this? I think this is something you should talk to them about. That should be the reflexive response, not something where you're keeping secrets or counseling them on your own or going by a list of advice like we saw here. None of your business should be the default. But apparently that wall is deteriorating, both socially and apparently now, at least in Washington state, legally. The link to that article's in the description below if you haven't already read it. It's very short. I posted the Wayback Machine version of the first edition of that article because they've made several interesting changes and omissions in the time since it was first published. But anyway, everybody, I'm going to call it here. My voice is failing me. I need to get up and do something else for a while. Let's see. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, Thursday, TED Excellence, where I'll look at another off-brand TED Talk for education and enlightenment. I'm debating between a couple right now, but the thing is, TEDx keeps posting more content as the day goes by, so I'm not quite sure yet. I've got something about like destroying canon, CANON, like in stories and things that deal with doing away with books or such that are written by white men. I've got mindfulness, something about mindfulness. I've got one, what the world gets wrong about Canada. I'm curious about that one. Should I find out what's wrong with what the world gets wrong about Canada? Maybe I can get an actual Canadian on here with me for that one to tell me one way or the other, like a Gen T Maxi or a Pincalo or a Blind Press or something. I might save that one for another day. We'll see. But otherwise, everybody, aside from that, thank you guys so much for joining me today on this Wednesday. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You guys have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the GoFundMe's pinned to the top of the chat box, and thanks again to Kieverdam for those. Thank you guys so much for your generosity. It is very much appreciated. Everyone, let me know what you thought about this or any of the other SOGIE parts in the comments below. Leave a like on the way out if you would. And otherwise, I hope you all have a good rest of your Wednesday and week ahead of you. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.